Okay, good evening, and welcome to the special meeting of the governing body on August 27th. This meeting has been called for a specific reason to discuss budget presentations. I would like to start the meeting by calling it to order and ask that stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance before we get into the agenda items. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll do the roll call, please.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Valdivia Acala.
Here.
Ortiz.
Right here.
Banks.
Here.
Kell.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Dobler.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
And Hofer. Here. All right, we have 10 present.
Okay. We'll move on to presentations. Madam Clerk.
First one is an update of storm debris cleanup at budgetary impact from Braxton Copley, Assistant City Manager.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. First off, thank you for joining us this evening on this special meeting. Thank you for taking the time. In this first presentation, Braxton Copley, our Assistant City Manager, is going to provide an update of the storm debris cleanup to include the budgetary impacts associated with that. With that, I'll turn it over to Braxton.
Mr. Assistant Manager.
Yes, thank you, governing body. Here tonight to give you an update on the storm debris and where we are in terms of the estimated amount of damage, as well as where the County Emergency Management and Kansas Department of Emergency Management are. So starting with a week ago Wednesday, we had a storm that hit three parts of town really hard. The Potwin, Kendall-Auburndale area, Oakland, and parts of North Topeka, especially along the river corridor. We, based on the severity of the damage, I mean, there were many, many streets in those three areas that were impassable with trees down, power lines down. We recognized that this was a type of storm that we needed to bring in assistance to help us in a quick and orderly fashion get the debris, because it was going to pose a absolute undue burden on residents in those areas in particular. So we utilized our emergency contracts with two haulers, got them on site starting that Monday morning, and they are going through town. You can see the blue area. This is just an overall view of the city of Topeka. These are the streets that have been cleared. We are following all of the FEMA regulations so that in the event that this is declared an emergency, we would be eligible to get reimbursed for these expenses. And that requires having a third-party observer note the location. We had to measure the trucks. We have to follow them to the area where they're dumping, and we have to document where the debris is coming from. So all of that information. The third-party observer that we have is the Thompson Group, and they're the ones out there. In between loads, their guys are going out, sweeping the streets, looking to see where we have debris, and the blue streets are the ones that we have cleared. The Potwin area, you can see we've made very good progress in terms of getting that area cleared. North Topeka, we're a little further behind. You can see that we have made some good progress, but I mean, some of this, it's literally going block by block. And then, of course, Oakland, you see that we are still, I mean, it's almost mano-y-mano in terms of block to block, in terms of picking debris up. Oakland was very, very hard hit. In terms of where we are on the overall expenses, the two major expenses that we have so far are the $525,000. That is our estimated expense to get us through Sunday night with our contract haulers and our third-party observer. We're estimating just over $500,000. Then we will be required to dispose of the matter, which requires that you have to grind it. You have to reduce the volume of that woody debris. And so we've got an estimate in terms of what that is going to cost, and that is just at $276,000. And then you see that we're, right now, our total estimated cost is $1 million, just right over $1 million. The county gave us an extremely tight deadline as of yesterday to get them our estimates for the damage to the storm. We met that deadline, got it to them. We have had communication from Kansas Department of Emergency Management that we appear to have made it over a magic threshold. So Kansas Department of Emergency Management is now asking us for supporting document, and they have given us an equally aggressive deadline of September 6th to get their questionnaire completed and submitted to them while they engage in the conversation with FEMA to see whether this is going to be eligible for reimbursement. If not, this $1 million will need to be borne by the city. So with that, gladly stand for any questions that you have.
Questions for records? Councilman David?
If we have constituents that are either unable or just cannot get, it's on. Yeah. If they can't get the debris to the curb, is there anything the city can do to assist with that?
I would, the short answer is I would ask the constituents to ask their neighbors, turn to their local charitable organizations, churches, to ask for assistance to get that private debris out to the back of curb.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further questions? Councilwoman Hiller?
Along those lines, I've seen some pretty nice discussions on Facebook pages and on Nextdoor where people have asked for help and various people have volunteered. It's been pretty nice.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I have several questions. Braxton, is there, with so much that was learned with this storm, is there going to be a future time where you will come and present, or if we can find out as a governing body, in anticipation of any storms of this magnitude or worse, if there will be SOPs put into place? And there may be already, but the only reason I'm asking that is because I had emailed you a number of issues and you responded to them with your crews right away. But I'm wondering if we had all the standard SOPs in place. When you're finished answering, I have two more questions.
So the starting point is I believe that the appropriate SOPs are in place in terms of my crews, and that is their responsibility is to maintain the trees that are in the right-of-way. And obviously the very first thing that we did, we call it the push. And that is we had forestry and we had all of our street people out there as well as the blight crew. And their first goal was to get those streets open to be able to carry traffic. City manager and I are currently working on a policy in terms of at what point, what's the magic tipping point in terms of the city providing assistance like we're doing in this event and like we did last summer in that September event.
Okay, so policies, so say for example, when there was the tree that fell, the full tree except for the exposed roots that was in the city easement that fell on the woman's house and blocked basically the access to being able to get out of the house. I mean, they were able to, but it would have been dangerous for them. And I called you and your guys were out there like really quickly. So those are regular policies that are in place. It's just finding out where they are happening. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And because that was a right-of-way tree, that was our responsibility. And again, as you know, virtually every block in Oakland it looked like a war zone, right? I did appreciate your constantly reaching out to me with some of those critical things like the tree on the house so that we could prioritize in terms of getting our staff there, because otherwise it's like a needle in a haystack. I mean, my guys are truly out trying to get those streets open, and then it's a matter of triage, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you for that. The second one is that will there be provided to the governing body and maybe in a public forum like this, once all the paperwork is done and sent into the county, is there some kind of overall number that will be attached that tries to get an estimate on what residents' dollar damage was so that we can look at one lump total, or no?
That would be on the spectrum of what I could do. I think that what you're probably talking about would be if it is declared as an emergency, what information that we could get from KDEM or from FEMA in terms of what the overall financial impact was. And I don't know if they collect on the private side or if it's just governmental. So we can tease through that as we go through this, and hopefully we get federal assistance.
And I hope so too. And to me, it makes sense for us to be provided that information. I don't know if we will, but so we can kind of have the whole package that can be presented, and maybe just a rough breakdown. But I think citizens would appreciate that. The other thing is, and then my final question is, I just want to make it, after all of this has calmed down, I've already asked you, and you were very open to it, but I want Oaklanders to know, and people listening, is that once all of this is calmed down and we can look in the rearview mirror and see that, for the most part, this is behind us, I do believe that there has to be some kind of review. I'm not saying citywide, I'm just looking at my district right now that has a voluminous amount of trees, especially in Oakland, in easements. And I think that together, we have to have a look at those trees and for the future, right? So I appreciate you saying yes to that. But finally, when you talk about the grinding down cost, to reduce the amount of debris, I'm just thinking real quick, is there any way that can be sold off for any kind of benefit? What's coming out of those wood chippers does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. So my understanding of the FEMA regs is that we can deliver it to a site, and then we basically say, it's your responsibility to reduce the volume to grind it, and then after that, it's their property. And if they have the ability to sell it, give it away, whatever, but it's no longer ours. We don't have control over that.
Once you hand it over, it becomes out of our control, and we cannot benefit from that in any way, shape, or form.
Correct, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Further questions? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Braxton, given that you're discussing the chipping and the storing on our various waste disposal sites, since we just went through a long season of fires that we couldn't get put out at the forestry disposal site, maybe it's a good time to let everybody know that you all did work with them in terms of some standard procedures about how tall those piles of chips can be, and you might want to say just a little bit about that, but hopefully just because this is a big volume, we're not going to have big piles again.
So 2 points. First is that the fire chief and I have engaged Garrick in numerous conversations relative to how we best manage the Garrick disposal site. And they have agreed to, in terms of size and spacing limitations, as well as they have re-engaged Frito-Lay in terms of using more of their green product as opposed to just pallets, so that we hopefully can minimize the amount that's being stored on site. So I would say very productive conversations all around with Garrick, Frito-Lay, city staff. They are agreeable to, as we go in to do our amendment, we're going to have the size and spacing limitations added to the upcoming contract amendment with Garrick. I will also assure you that the storm debris that our contractors are hauling are going to a third-party site that has to be separate and distinct and controlled so that we meet the FEMA regulations. So that is on a third-party site. It's not being taken to the Garrick yard.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gracias, Braxton.
Anything further? Assistant City Manager, I think you've done an excellent job in trying to coordinate all the things that people don't see that happen behind the scenes to get this kind of damage cleared up in a way that's organized and methodical so that everybody gets the attention that they need. So our appreciation for all that you've done and for the crews that have been out there and so responsive to the needs of the citizens.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will not take any of the credit. It goes to the hard working men and women that are out there on the streets making a difference, making that connection with the citizens, trying to help them in a time of need.
Thank you, sir. Okay. We'll move on now to the third item on the agenda, action items. Madam Clerk.
It's discussion related to the City of Topeka 2025 operating budget.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. This next presentation, Josh McInerney, our budget manager, and various departments will take us through departmental overviews. We'll also present additional information on reductions and improvements that are included in the FY25 budget, proposed budget. I also do want to draw attention to this is leading up to our amendment discussion, proposed amendment discussion, which we should have next Tuesday evening. So I think that as part of this process, Josh has asked for any proposed amendments from the governing body ahead of time. I think tomorrow it's not a deadline, but if you could have that information to us so we can start vetting that information so we can have fruitful discussion next Tuesday ahead of our vote on September 10th to adopt the budget. So it is our intent next Tuesday to have straw votes for council to give us an indication of those things that you would like to see amended within the proposed budget. With that, I will turn it over to Josh to take us through this next presentation.
Thanks, City Manager. Good evening, governing body. So tonight's our kind of third round of department presentations. We'll be going through planning, legal, finance, HR, community engagement. We sent out some information last Friday on a budget supplement and then some further information. The main thing to take away from the first budget supplement I wanted to highlight is we've been talking a lot about in the last couple of months the special highway tax we get from the state. Now, that's been a steady or a flat revenue source throughout the course of 2023 or 2024, and we initially thought that we were going to be over encumbered on that fund by the end of the year. However, we've had projecting it out, and with our current fund balance, we are reneging the transfer we were making into that fund, so we don't have to subsidize that fund to support it going further. That's Tony Trower's crew, fix the potholes, patch potholes, et cetera. But I thought I wanted to point that out because we don't get a majority of that revenue till in June. So when we compiled the budget, we didn't have kind of a full scope of information. So I guess that's good news is that we don't have to subsidize that fund with additional money. So I just wanted to highlight that and make that clear. Now, further down the line in maybe the 26 or 27 budget, we'll have to make decisions on either adding revenue or removing expenses from there to make sure we're above our fund balance policy threshold. But I think for the 2025 and possibly the 2026 budget will be good. So this next slide, last week we got asked what were the cuts and what were the increases from the initial gathering of the 2025 budget to what was actually presented to you. So this is by general fund department or departments such as internal services like facilities that charge the general fund. So the takeaway from this slide is what the base budget means is for personnel assumptions and any locked in contractual expenses. For example, we were locked into a 3-year audit contract with BT & Co. We know what the expenses are each of those years. That's an expense that's not going to change. That would be something that would be included in the base budget. Stuff like electricity, natural gas bills, that would also be located there. But discretionary spending is something departments do control. So from the initial base budget, which was submitted by departments in April to what was presented to you guys in late July, which is the last column, the 2025 budget, we reduced $800,000 of spending from what initial requests were versus what actually made it into the book. Now, that doesn't change necessarily what's been presented to you, but we did vet what was truly needed because we knew it was going to be a tight budget year for this year, and then going forward, we wanted to be cognizant of requests and spending. So that was the initial ask, and that's what we wanted to clear up in a supplement that we sent out late Friday.
Josh, what was the initial amount that we reduced out of the budget, and then what did we add back to get this net 827 negative?
I think it was around a little less than $2 million is what we took out. So to get to a net, so it would have been 2.8 million, or it would have been 2.8 and then been 1.2 of ads to get to the 800,000.
So I just want to make clear to the governing body that as part of the budget process, we eliminated about $2.8 million worth of expenses from the base budget and then added back approximately $2 million in enhancements. One of those enhancements, an example of that, is the $600,000 that we added for the engineering services to Public Works. So we did reduce about $2.8 million based upon some of the things, the line items, some of the positions that we shared with the governing body on Friday in that supplement. And then we added back approximately $2 million of enhancements or improvements, such as the engineering $600,000 that I just mentioned. So the net decrease is that $827,000 that you see here. So I just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you, Josh.
Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Josh, forgive me, I'm getting dizzy with this already. When we have this supplement 1 and 2 that you guys just referenced, is that changes that you've made since we were given the budget book, or that went into the budget book in the first place? Question 1.
So the supplement 1, those changes are not reflected in your book. Those changes will be made for when you vote on the final budget.
So these were made after we got our books?
Yes.
Okay. And then second, on the, for instance, the overview that's on page, what is numbered 4, that is this, when we look at departments going up and down, in this big book, there are a number of places where you transferred an obligation partly or in full out of the general fund and are charging it to a different fund. So is this 123/138 million general fund money only, or the entire budget?
General fund money only. So what you're getting at is in the net decrease and increase column, for example, if we're paying someone else out of another funding source, that would be considered a net decrease out of the general fund.
I understand that. I just want people to understand
you're
it
good.
doesn't mean we made that cut. And there's
It's
some
a
robbing
transfer.
Peter to pay Paul going on in this overall proposal. So it's kind of hard to chase it.
Yeah, no, and some kind of the rationale for why we do that, sometimes we have built up fund balances in other funds to where we can take the heat off some other funds that are lower in money. So sometimes it is robbing Peter to pay Paul, but we want to take advantage of excess fund balance built up in other funds sometimes.
Well, but as we know, I mean, some of that's being pulled out of funds we just created also, or plans that we'd made. And so just want people to realize that.
Okay.
So next, we're going to have Director Rhiannon Friedman come up and talk about the planning budget.
Yeah, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Before she does, can you kind of explain number 4 on page 3, the special highway fund?
Yeah, so like I was saying, that's money we get from the state. It's the gas tax. And when we had a wage reopener last year, we increased their starting salary. Granted, it was only $15 or $16 to $19.43, to where we thought that fund was going to be over encumbered below our fund balance policy minimum for the end of the year, to where we'd have to make a transfer from another fund to cover that spin down. We think based off of future projections and then some vacancies that we're carrying, that we don't need to make that transfer for 25, because the fund balance, the projected fund balance by the end of 25 will still be above the 10% policy minimum. So we don't need to supplement or subsidize that fund any further, because the fund balance is high enough to handle future spending.
So where will the excess, where will that go?
That just will.
It was just projected, so we didn't have it.
Well, it was going to go from they're loosely, the citywide half-cent sales tax fund is used to maintain current streets. And that's what that's what Tony and his team do. So you can make an argument where you can transfer money in there to help fund it, but we're reneging that authority. So that's where the money was coming from, but we don't think we need to do that transfer anymore based off future projections.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a quick question. You're going to have to explain, Josh or city manager, the item on page 114. That's a pretty big miscalculation. I mean, with respect, that needs some explanation. If we could get that, that would be great.
Yeah, Councilman Duncan. So what was omitted, that's my fault. It was a transposition error in the debt interest payment. It was missing a trailing digit. So that was the error, and that's on me.
Thank you.
But the calculation is,
That's the principal and interest payment we'll pay in 2025 for our debt service fund.
so our model includes the correct number.
The whole rest of the budget accounted for that being right. It was just that page, what's on paper was wrong.
Okay, thanks for that.
Go ahead, Josh. Mariana?
I think you get me now.
Okay.
Good
Director?
evening. Okay, so I'm going to start by breaking down and talking through each of the divisions that make up planning and development. So we'll start with planning. So just as a reminder, there are 3 portions to planning. So we have our traditional land use planning, transportation planning, which covers the MPO group, and then also our zoning. So to kind of talk through this, I know there's a lot of text on these slides, so I'll try to break it down and narrate a little bit here. But some of the 2024 accomplishments that I wanted to highlight in planning is the completion, I should say will be completed by the end of 2024. We'll be completing updates to the neighborhood health map and then also the neighborhood revitalization plan. Planning staff has been working hard. Right now we're meeting with all of the taxing entities. We'll be holding those meetings through the end of September and then coming back to you in October for approval of that update. So very excited to see positive trends in neighborhoods getting more and more healthy, which is the whole point of this program. So it's very exciting. We also completed accessory dwelling unit text amendments, so that came before you at the August 20th meeting. So exciting, I'm glad that we're able to add that on and just trying to think of any innovative way to add more affordable housing to the community. And then last but not least, we are in the middle of working with Public Works on an update to our pedestrian master plan. So we held an open house at the Topeka Shawnee County Library last Thursday and had some really good turnout. We've got some great feedback there, and we're working with JEO Consulting, and they're actually working with Washburn students that are going around, and they are riding bikes along all of the paths of our sidewalks to test and see which ones need a little bit more work than others, and we're building out a master plan to model that. So the data that we'll have at the end of this year, hoping to have it in December, will be huge for us to figure out how to spend all of this grant money that we've stumbled upon here recently. So very exciting. Looking into 2025, some of the implementation that comes with the pedestrian master plan, and then of course our safe routes to school plan. So that will definitely be a goal, is getting some of that work contracted out and starting to work through that. And then also been talking with Councilman Banks about this, and I know this was on the last council agenda as well, but we'll be working through completing our East Topeka development plan. So this is focused on the area of like where Rock Fires developed at around 45th and Croco. So we have a lot of land over there. We see a lot of potential for some future housing development and future growth. We talk about things that are happening to the east in Lawrence, and how eventually that's an area that we need to focus on too. So doing the first step and kind of creating a master plan to focus on that area and what land use and the future might look like over there. Okay, so sliding into development services. So development services is kind of broken into 2 different groups. The first one being field services. So field services covers all of our licensing, so licensing all of our contractors throughout the city, and then also inspection. So mechanical, plumbing, electrical inspection of all of the commercial projects that take place across the city. So they're a very important group. And then the other side of the house is permitting. So permitting is made up of plans review, so commercial plans review for every project that comes forward. We have a team of people that are working through that with their consultants and engineers to ensure that everything is designed to our building codes. And then also compliance officers. So then we also have folks that go out on site to ensure that what's in the plan is actually what's occurring out on site to ensure a smooth process for everyone. So 2024 accomplishments. So this dates back to the days of our Harvard Bloomberg plan, if you remember us talking about that. One of the outcomes of that study was the finding that we thought a development navigator role would be very helpful. Sometimes, you know, we've got a lot of contractors and developers that do a lot of work across the city, but if you're new to that world or you're wanting to step your toe in it, I could see how it could be slightly intimidating to walk into planning without really understanding all of the processes. So the idea is the creation of this development navigator role. We brought on board Jenny Taylor, who has been absolutely amazing. So she's the first point of contact. And really helps people get from the planning side of site plan review over to helping make sure that they are smoothly getting through their permitting process and that they don't run into any issues along the way. So Jenny's been a great addition to having that role. And then lastly, I have to tout, I feel very strongly about our development services, our inspection team. 99% of inspections completed as scheduled. I questioned my team about that number several times to find out that it is true. We have a very strong return times on all of our inspections. And, you know, if you ever need an inspection, somebody can reach out to the city. And generally, if not in a half a day, we can be there in 2 hours. So we do a really good job about trying not to slow down a project on part of our inspection. Some of the goals for 2025, you also just approved this at a committee meeting, so this will be coming in front of council here before too long, but we are looking to move to biannual contractor licensing renewals. So right now, we have all of our contractors that are licensed with the city of Topeka coming back through our processes every single year, which is a large lift on contractors and also a heavy lift on our staff. So we just see this as a way that we'll phase it into 2 groups to try to break it out evenly and just hopefully not make such a rush of 1,700 licenses getting renewed in the 3 months of January to March. So excited to get that in front of you as well. And then transitioning to the new ERP system. Part of the new Tyler ERP system, it's very strong in permitting and licensing. And so I know that development services will have a heavy lift of that in 2025. So looking forward to learning more about what that looks like, but yeah.
Okay.
And then last but not least, housing services. So housing services is also a department that's split into 2 sides. So we have the social service side, which I kind of call more of our people side of the programs. So these are programs like EAS, Shelter Plus Care, Impact Avenues, and then the rehabilitation side. So that's Renee Creaky and her team, and they're focused on more of the physical side of housing. So what rehab dollars that we have that we can help get in the hands of folks that are trying to make repairs that are necessary or could be coming through code violations to their homes. 2024 accomplishments. So Carrie and her team have worked really hard to increase the care collaboration with Shelter Plus Care. There was a while where I think in an honest effort to try to help as many people as possible, the care piece can be difficult to secure. And so I think the idea was, hey, let's try to house as many folks as we can, but it has been made very clear time and time again that putting somebody in shelter without having the right wraparound services and care does not accomplish the end goal. So really making sure her team has been very thoughtful about getting MOUs in place with all of our partners to make sure that everybody in that program, when they're entered into that and tied to housing, that they are also tied to a wraparound service or a program, somebody that can help them along the way. And then, of course, expanding our EAS program to include a housing navigator. So housing navigator, I know this is something that we've talked about on the code side, but they also work very closely with EAS. So this is when we're talking about how do we connect folks that need help navigating through our system, but also sometimes this comes through code. Some of our LMI neighbors will come to us with code violations that they're not able to repair just simply because they don't have the funds to do so. So we have dollars that are set aside to try to help work with them to help keep them housed in their place and do whatever we can to help support. Looking to 2025, so This is something everybody knows about because we've been talking about it constantly, but really, really digging into the transition from EAS to Built for Zero. So this will be a very heavy lift, but it'll take a lot of focus. But I know that we've got the right team in place to do it. So looking forward to really focusing on that and hopefully making some strong progress in 2025. And then, of course, it goes without saying, but worth a reminder that improving our COC, Continuum of Care scores, increases our funding opportunities. So we have our CON plan, which are grants that we're entitled to based upon our city population, and then we also have the COC, which is competitive grants. So these are grants that we work with our community partners and a few of our task force, and we ask them to help us fill out the application. It's very collaborative. And then our score relates to our funding. So Carrie has been working diligently with the team to try to increase our scores just so that we can increase more funding opportunities for the community. All right. So lastly, so we were asked to put together an overview of what a 13% reduction would look like. So I know this is not going to be any different than what you hear from the other departments tonight, but a very, very minimal part of our budget in planning, development, and housing services falls outside of our FTEs. So in order to meet this reduction of the $558,000, we would be proposing to cut $65,000 from contractuals and commodities. So just to kind of help you understand where that would come from, really the only areas that we had where we thought that we could pull from would have been education, dues, and travel. So just if there were extra conferences that people were interested in, those were areas that we were able to lower and reduce that number. And then also contractual services. So sometimes in planning and development services, for example, right now we are down a commercial plans reviewer. So we are having to outsource some of our plans review. Just because we're having a hard time finding the right talent for that. It's a pretty specific position. And then on the planning side, when we get additional requests, that may come up for, additional attention for a neighborhood plan or an area that somebody wants to see a land development plan for, those are things that fall outside of what our staff has the capacity to do sometimes in-house. So that's when we use contractual dollars there. So the rest of that had to be made up with a reduction of FTEs. So what we're presenting is 7 FTEs, so that $493,000. So we have a total of 48 FTEs in planning and development, and 36.5 of them are general funded. So we do have some that are grant funded on the housing services side. So that's just something to be mindful of when you're looking through your numbers too. So just talking about some of the concerns about these reductions and the impact that it could have to housing and development would be just Built for Zero. We've got a big year ahead of us and really all hands on deck with all of our EAS staff and trying to make that transition. And then, kind of like I touched on earlier, I think that our team always wants to be able to say yes when somebody's got a project or something that's near and dear to them through their district or maybe in an area our constituents are asking for something. But it becomes difficult when we don't have any contractual dollars to try to do things outside of our normal scope of work, just being able to take on that work in-house. And then, something that's really been focused on, similar to bringing on the development navigator position, is our relationships with contractors and developers, being really thoughtful and making sure that we're doing a good job, answering any and all questions in a timely manner, and just trying to really wrap ourselves around every project and really advocate for them. So I think just the more staff we have, the easier we're able to take that on. Grant opportunities, we always talk about how do we go after new grant opportunities and then being able to have matching funds for those. It's nice to have some extra dollars aside for that in case we ever do stumble upon an opportunity. We have funds to match. And then, I think it's just a matter of us being able to be more proactive. I know there's certain areas that we've talked about. Zoning enforcement is certainly one of those where we definitely take more of a reactive approach just based upon the size of the city and the number of employees and staff that we have focused on those areas. So just all things to think about. But I would be happy to answer any questions.
Question from the body. Councilwoman Hiller.
Is your department, and it's not up to you, I don't think, but anyway, was one of the ones that when I got to it in the budget book, caused me a great deal of pause. Some of the departments show their funding from other sources besides general fund, but yours does not. And you have a substantial amount of funding that comes from HUD in particular, but also some grant money, some of which pays for staff, not just for pass-through. Is there any place where your department's full budget is available with all sources?
Yeah, so we actually put a line item budget online for those you're referring to, our grant funds, the 700 and 710 fund. Those are actually also on pages, they're also in the book, which would be, they're in the 130s, I can't find them right now, but that's all online on budget@topeka.org, those grant fund line items. And I think I also shot you an email about them too, so.
Yeah, I wasn't there's been a lot back and forth, that I had it all in one place so you could look at what the total size of that department, and certainly separated in planning and development and housing services, but we're running a lot of money through there that doesn't show. And I've been around long enough, I've seen staff positions that were always grant funded and then seen migration into general fund, picking up either positions that we already had or added positions, and it's a little hard to be able to see that without them all being in one place at the same time. So that's why I asked.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we have whenever we go through our con plan, we do a really good job of breaking that out, so I have some of that information readily available that I could share. But what I could tell you from a staff standpoint, we have 11 and a half employees that are grant funded in housing services, and then 5 and a half that are general fund.
Thank you.
Yep.
Cliff's notes, I like it.
Further questions for Anna? Okay. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
The next department we're going to have up is Director Foster from the HR department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I brought friends.
Well, our team, good.
Yeah. I wanted each of them to be able to explain to you what they oversee in their area and to talk a little bit about that. And I thought it's better to hear it from an expert. So that's why they're here. I will tell you that in anticipation of a 13% budget deficit in '26, we looked ahead and we did some pro forma projections in terms of what a 3%, 4%, or 5% decrease would look like. And we did take a 3% budget decrease out of our general fund budget for '25. And so what we're going to do is to go over a little bit of that with you tonight, and I can't tell, yeah, I think that's the right one. So we decreased commodities by $600, and a lot of that, we provide water for the fitness center and some things like that, and we felt like we could take money, reduce that money without really impacting services for that. We reduced our contractual services by $5,000. We were able to renegotiate some contracts and to have some savings in terms of that. We cut $3,000 from training and development and felt that if we had a watchful eye and were more intentional in terms of the training that was provided, that wouldn't hurt too much, and so we cut there. HR also provides training, tuition reimbursement, those kinds of things across the city, so we do a lot of that. And in fact, we kind of look at what we do as being a resource for humans, and so we try to reach out and to do things that support employees, directors across the organization. And so we were careful about where we cut. We were able to cut $12,000 from medical services. We provide the physical exams, the pre-employment exams, and Sarah will talk a little bit more about a lot of that when she goes over the risk budget. And then we cut $8,000 from where we contract with Stormont Vail to provide a lot of those services. And so those are the places that we cut. I put the mission up, and our mission, in fact, we just did a new mission statement, and so it's not on this slide because we just worked on that today. We've been doing some strategic planning and some Lean Six Sigma processes to try to streamline, again, in anticipation of what we think is coming in the 26 and 27 budgets. But the HR department embraces the city of Topeka's mission by delivering core administrative services that attract, support, enhance, develop, and retain a superior and diverse workforce. And so that's the mission as it currently stands. So again, we oversee services that support people across the organization. Our goals are some of the goals that we have, and again, we're working on that strategic plan, and we're projecting out for 3 years with that. Targeting training and development, because we feel that we want a strong workforce, we want a capable workforce, and that training and development helps do that, and we can develop succession planning so people can move up within the organization. Updating position descriptions to clarify what those job duties are and what those expectations are. Reviewing and improving position requisition process. We identified some bottlenecks and some places where that's held up and slowed down, and so that's another goal that we have and that we're developing a plan for. And then the succession planning. So the personnel, I'm not going to go over those numbers, you can see them, but that's just generally the overall budget. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shelby, and she'll talk to you about benefits and kind of what we're looking at and doing in that area.
So the benefits team oversees the employee benefits program, and that includes, of course, our group health plan that offers medical, dental, prescription plans for all employees, wellness plans, including our wellness incentive plan, our CAPERS and KPNF plans, EAP services, and we manage our employees' leave of absence, and that includes our FMLA and non-FMLA leaves. Services include negotiating our medical, prescription, dental, and voluntary insurance plans, processing enrollments and changes, making sure that they're in the system for payroll deductions for the employee percents, providing retirement seminars and individual retirement reviews, and managing the Healthcare Advisory Committee. Goals for 2025 include reviewing the wellness incentive program through the 2025 negotiations with the unions. The agreement that we have currently, the cost share agreement, ends in 2025. So our hope would be to open negotiations in early 2025 and have a new agreement in place for the following year. After having our wellness incentive program for several years, it's been in place. I think we've all seen some areas where we can make some improvements, and so I think we've got some goals and some hopes for some improvements in the future with that plan. Also in 2025, we will have an RFP for medical, prescription, dental, and also our clinic services. They all come up for review. So in 2025, it'll be a busy year for RFPs. And of course, that gives us an opportunity to look at not only the different vendor options, but also really digging in closely and looking at the different benefit options that we offer. We plan to develop a total rewards summary, just something that outlines the cost of all employee benefits, just being able to kind of outline that clearly so everybody can see that we're putting a specific dollar amount on all of the benefits that are offered to employees. And last would be evaluating all those benefit options to determine their importance to employees. Just wanting to make sure that through the year, we're reaching out to employees as we're doing those RFP programs, recognizing that if there's some tough decisions that need to be made, we want to make sure that we're in touch with the employees and figuring out which items are the most important to the employees. And the tough part of that, we all know, is the importance is going to depend on which employee you ask, because we all have our own priorities, but there may be some tough decisions to be made next year.
And so,
Excuse me. Councilman Kelly, have a question?
I was kind of going to comment on the healthcare plans for our employees. Sorry, kind of get on the healthcare plans. I know it was last year, I believe we got into the tiered program, things like that. I think the best thing we can do for our city employees is give them the options, let them have a lot of things that they're looking for, but tier it up for them. Because if we just slash it, when there's a chance we lose employees aren't taking care of themselves, and that it's going to cost us in the long run. So I think not having an aggressive look at the health plans and trying to slash where you can there is maybe not the best idea sometimes. So that area would be one area I would be very cautious about slashing a lot from, because of the simple fact of the long-term benefits and deficits it can create by costing our employees a lot more and also costing our city a lot more.
I appreciate those thoughts. Thank you.
And Councilman, I'll just add that our financial forecast does assume a bit of an increase next year based upon the RFP that was discussed here. So hear you loud and clear.
okay. And so now I will turn it over to Sarah to talk about the risk program. Are you changing those or mine?
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about our risk funds, and they're really split in, I guess, two different sections. So the first one is actually going to cover our lines of insurance that really protect the city's liability. So our general liability, cyber, law enforcement, crime. The other part is all of our property and vehicle claims. So anytime we have an accident or anything like that, or there's damage, that comes out of that as well. The other part of this fund is our CDL program, which I'm super proud of because it's been a big benefit to us, but obviously it has its cost. At this point, though, we've had, since its inception, it's been almost 2.5 years, we've had over 80 employees go through the program, and conservatively, we've saved at least $265,000 all the way up to $600,000 if we compare it to the other programs in the area and how much they cost. So it's been a big savings to the city as far as training costs goes. It's also a big benefit to employees because it's paid training. They don't have to spend a month at a program that is full-time, that requires full-time, where they can come here and do the training and still have on-the-job training with their departments as well, but get through the CDL program and get their A's. So it's been great, and we've made a lot of improvements and continue to cut our costs, so it's not costing us as much. So that's been amazing. It's a big benefit for our recruitment too, because that's a benefit that we can hire without a CDL. We're not competing with other privates that have their CDLs, because that can be difficult. And we're really working on now, one of our goals for this is we have been finalizing a proposal for the city manager to talk about maybe extending our services for the CDL program outside of our employees to some of the external organizations around, and maybe bringing in some revenue that way, as well as offering a cost savings to some other places, because we could offer it a little less with our program that we've already had going and created and been doing successfully. So we're excited to take that to the city manager and bring that up with some options for that as well. Some other of our goals are just looking at our overall insurance needs that we have and ensuring that we are adequately covered and we're not duplicating any coverages anywhere. Doing an extensive marketing effort in our renewal this year in partnership with our broker to be really aggressive with our renewal rates. And And then just doing an overall property evaluation. We've not done a citywide one. We've obviously done different areas throughout the construction and remodeling process, but getting a full evaluation of all of our property as well is really important to us. The other part of risk funds is our workers' comp. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but this fund provides all the accountability for our expenditures for any employee injuries, any employee work-related injuries. So for this fund, we actually, the departments are each charged a different percentage of wages based on the position and the classification code that they have. So obviously, the more dangerous positions, we are more concerned with those worker comp rates. So it varies, but that's how that fund is, that's how that fund works. And then we also provide all this, a lot of our staffing comes out of that fund as well that handles all of our risk programs. So we do a lot on that end as well. And our big goal is really always reducing our lost time and overall claim count. We're being a lot more aggressive with our safety meetings and getting in some of the departments, new trainings, thinking outside of the box, working with some of our new programs that we've had that maybe you can offer more virtual and options, just more options for training that we can cover more of our field employees as well. And then looking at some of our repetitive work injuries that we have and doing a really deep job analysis into those and seeing, you know, if we can look at some of the tools they're using and improve those so we don't have repetitive shoulder injuries or elbows, or looking at how they're doing it and addressing that process and changing it. So that's a big goal for us this year, is looking at some of those repetitive injuries and hoping to decrease those moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
So then we were asked to look at if a 13% reduction would be applied. And the industry standard for HR people is 1.5 to 4.5 HR professionals per 100 employees. And with that being said, just using a conservative estimate of 1.5, we should have 16 to 17 HR professionals. We have 14. And the probably more common industry standard is 1.7, and that would be 18 to 19 HR professionals. And so we get a lot done with less. And so in terms of a reduction, probably the biggest reduction that we could take in terms of staff reductions is to get rid of the director position. And that's one position instead of 2 or 3 to do that, because I don't feel like that we can reduce this staff by 2 or 3 people and be as effective. And so we put the director position on the chopping block. We felt like some of the work we do with employee retention, that we could take $21,000 out of that and not hurt the city that much in terms of employee turnover. Turnover, I think if my numbers are right, it's around 15%, which is pretty high turnover, and the costs that come with that, your recruiting costs, your onboarding, your training to get people up to speed so they can do that. And so it's important to have those programs in to retain employees. And so with 21, we thought we could still get it done without hurting things too much. The contractual services, we felt like we could take another $18,000 off of that. And in fact, Sarah didn't mention it, but one of the things that we're going to do is to look at our work comp provider, and perhaps even along with that to be able to look at how we manage that wellness center, that wellness program in terms of doing that. And so we felt like we could take $18,000 out without hurting the services that people are receiving by a lot. And then reducing purchased services, things like pre-screenings, off-site storage, shredding. We felt like we could reduce that by $10,000 and still be able to have confidential shredding and disposal of documents. So with that, we are here to answer questions.
Hey, Councilwoman Hiller, then
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Just a question. I think this is our first year, maybe second year, to self-insure on our vehicles. And I wondered how that was going.
It's been successful. We've been able to save quite a bit of money, and we partner with legal to do all the claims, and it's worked really well. So I can get you some numbers if you want on as far as savings go, but it's been really successful. We haven't had any major hiccups or any issues that made us regret this decision. I think it was the right decision.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to add too that, in terms of training and development, we're going to send Sarah to school to be an insurance adjuster and learn how to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
So when you're talking about eliminating the HR, is that eliminating you, Pam?
Yeah, it would.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I just assume it didn't happen that way, and I hope that with some of this Lean Six Sigma planning that we're doing, we can find a way to get efficiencies and I can stick around, but yeah.
Okay. One thing that you didn't mention that I highlighted was eliminate the TWTW program.
Oh, I skipped that.
Yeah, you did, and that's okay that you skipped it, because that's a no-no. I'm looking at Josh, and I'm like, absolutely not.
Well,
Absolutely not.
It's a huge crunch to our budget at $55,000 to come out of that, and when we had to come up with $277,000 to take out. The other thing is that it was hugely labor intensive for staff. We couldn't get other things done while we were managing that, and so we either need another person to help with that, or something. But we're not looking at budget increases. We're looking at decreases. I'm sorry, I missed that. I apologize.
I'm glad you missed it, because I wanted to bring that up, though. I think it's very important in this budget. It's my way to work for the kids that work in the summertime. It is a few months, and maybe we can get around something else where I know, and this is why I can never get this program off the ground, because every single time we cut the kids first, every single time that we cut, and then there's only like 19, what do we have, 19, 20 this year?
I think we had space for 20. And we had, and maybe you remember, 30 or 40, maybe 40 of them that had applied to it, and we selected 20, and then one of them at the last minute couldn't do it, so.
Yeah. Blue Cross and Blue Shield came through. I know it's time consuming, it's a few months in the summer, but it does help our youth. As big as our budget is, I think this is nickels. I do appreciate you looking at the 13%. I do appreciate you taking a hack on your job, but this is a no-no, Josh. I hope you're hearing me.
Councilman McGill.
I agree with Councilwoman Ortiz on that. It's sometimes we look at certain programs and they're like, we think they're not important, but these are certain ones that can just elevate that child to the next level to get them to that aspiration of wanting more than what they might have grown up in, and wanting to go to college, wanting to, and if they can see that we were the help there, that could come back and benefit us as a city also, with having them staying here and then possibly even working for the city. Possibly having our job one day.
Well, I would have to echo the same sentiments about that program, because I've been out there and welcomed the kids into the program, and talking with the family, it goes beyond just the kids. It really lifts up that whole family, really, because they're able to get them into something that they might not have been able to afford on their own. And when we talk about where do we start in changing attitudes and perceptions and how we keep people in Topeka and grow our own. That's a very basic program that needs to be sustained, and I'd like to see it continue and maybe even grow more. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents on that.
Sure. Well, I'll just say in conclusion that I hope none of these cuts happen, that I hope that we're able to find those efficiencies and to work on those. But I always think that you have to be prepared. That's maybe the Girl Scout in me. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more question.
Councilman Ortiz.
So we put Everside into play a long time ago when the cost of medical went up, and I love it. I love it. But there's one thing that really bothers me, and Shelby knows I'm a pain in the butt with her. There's one thing that bothers me, and I can't remember the name of it, and I told Amanda, how do we get the word out that if you're on our services that you get free medicine if you go with triage? How do we get that word out? Because there's so many employees that I run into and I say, hey, if you are on our city insurance and you join up with this program, that your medication is free. And it's just another set of eyes on, you know, I've joined up with it, and it's just another set of eyes. I have to talk to the pharmacist every 3 months, and he goes over all my medicines. And I think that's very beneficial because when we put Everside in place, we knew that it would force people to go in and get the checkups, whether it's high blood pressure or whatever. And I think even with the medicines, I think that keeps our costs low. If it's free, that we don't need it, you know. So how do we get the word out that everybody knows? Because I know, like, I think his name was Josh, our other budget guy. Him and his wife had a baby. Everybody I run into, I give him that little pamphlet, you know, because it's such a good program. I've paid nothing for all of my prescriptions. It's zero, nada, except I had to pay for my cream for poison ivy. But
Okay.
That's what I was going to
Before you
say.
go further, and I appreciate the support of the program. I think we agree it's a great program, and I want to make sure that we're clear so there's no misunderstandings from folks listening in. All prescriptions are not free if employees are on that program. There are certain ones that would be.
But most of them are.
Many of them are, and it does provide a really nice discount for those that are not free. And just visiting with the pharmacy advocate person, it is a great program. And, you know, we highlight that in our benefit guide. The TRIA person frequently will come to our benefit fair and have an opportunity to visit with employees in person. So maybe just a little bit more promotion on our part, a little bit more communication to employees and promoting that the program is available to them.
Okay, because they said if I was on the next tier, I wouldn't have had to pay for that, so.
Thank you for those thoughts.
Councilman Kell.
To kind of piggyback on Councilman Ortiz again, I know on that, sometimes the communication from being on the employee health committee before, sometimes it's just emails and stuff like that. I think sometimes you got to get out there, you got to be there because some of these employees may not have that computer access. And when they do get the computer access, it's not, you know, when you have 100 emails just from HR or whoever, it's like, okay, these aren't important right now. So I think sometimes getting out there and really explaining some of these programs that are available, you know, whatever capacity to the employees does a lot better than sometimes just emailing them.
I agree. Thank you for that.
Further questions? Pam and her team?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Next, I'm going to pass it off to Amanda to present the legal department's budget.
Okay. Thank you so much, Josh. So today I'm here to present the legal department's budget. The city attorney's office is made up of 3 divisions. We have your general government division, your litigation division, and your prosecution division. And I'm going to be diving in briefly into what each of those divisions do. One is just a refresher, education for the public, but also to show the real value that they're serving to the city and how we've maintained a pretty lean budget for a lot of years, trying to make sure that we're fiscally responsible while still providing good legal services for all of our constituents. So to start off with our general government budget, if you want to jump to the next slide, Josh, that would be great. So in our general government division, we have 4 attorneys. These 4 attorneys perform contract review. There's over 600 contracts a year that run through the city attorney's office that have to be reviewed. union negotiations. At any given time, you have multiple union negotiations being handled. General legal questions from all of your various departments, including the city's governing body. Legal training for departments, including the police academy. The police legal advisor position was moved over just to the city attorney's budget a couple years ago. I think that's a better option. It is no longer simply a police legal advisor. It's a general government attorney that provides planning and zoning advice and questions and police legal advice, as well as teaching in the academy. We do ordinance drafting, open records responses, committee and other meeting coverage. We also perform legislative work. We identify municipal law trends. So it is a very busy division, as you can imagine. There's 1.5 support staff that help with that. That has been a pretty stable number of staff for decades from what we can tell in the records. We have continued to absorb work over the years. When I was hired 3 years ago, I was asked to be a proactive city attorney's office. That takes a lot more work than saying no. It's far easier to be a city attorney's office that says no. It's easier than having to try to figure out ways to get to yes. But that's a philosophy that we've really embraced, trying to find new ways and innovative things to do things, like your LLC ordinances or some of those new ways of looking at the same old problems, so that hopefully we can help our citizens to come up with new solutions to problems that are plaguing our community. Our next division is our civil litigation division. This is made up of 2 attorneys and 1.5 paralegals. It's funded out of our special liability fund. But at any given time, we're balancing 15 to 25 cases in-house on a wide range of issues. We have constitutional issues, we have your pothole claims, we have tort claims, initiative and referendum petitions, legislative work, all kinds of things run through there with civil litigation. They're also responsible for all our arbitrations and other union grievances, which can vary at any given time on how many you have. We respond to approximately 150 tort claims a year. And then we've also been absorbing all the car accident claims. We've taken those all back in-house, so we've continued to absorb extra work in the litigation division as well. That 2-attorney number has also been very stable for decades. I do think it's an appropriate number. We do have to refer some cases to outside counsel when the workload's too much, but I think overall that balance is appropriate with 2 attorneys. Unfortunately for last year, we've had to make do with 1 attorney for a long time. It took us a long time to fill that second civil position after a longtime attorney retired. Luckily, Jeff Leidick joined our team a couple months ago, and he has been great. Nick and I were talking today, and he said he is constantly amazed at the wide variety of cases that we have thrown at him already. So he is excited about the increased variety of cases he gets to do working at the city government. And then finally, our final division, if you want to move slides, Josh, is our prosecution division. Our prosecution division currently has 4 prosecutors. It also has 4 different support staff in that division. We have a very busy prosecution division. We are one of the top 5 busiest prosecution divisions in the state of Kansas for municipal government. We see a wide variety of cases. We do currently, as I said, have 4 full-time prosecutors. When I started in 2021, we were doing a constant rotation of our chief of prosecution. They had had 7 chiefs of prosecution in the last 10 years. So when the opportunity came pretty early, after I came to the city to find a new chief of prosecution, I suggested maybe we do something different and not hire the same type of person that we'd hired, somebody coming out of a district attorney's office that was pretty new in their career and wanted to take that first supervisory job. We have far too busy of an office to have it be your first supervisory job. You are someone that is overseeing a large chunk of my division of young prosecutors, people that are fresh out of school. It takes an experienced person. So the city manager at the time said, well, if you can figure out how to pay for it in your budget, then you can pay more and hire a different kind of person. So at that time, we had eliminated our 4th FTE and only had 3 prosecutors for about a year. That changed when we added the prosecution of domestic violence. We went ahead and added that 4th prosecutor position back. It is not possible with our current workload to adequately prosecute domestic violence with 3 prosecutors. There's just not enough hours in the day and not enough attorneys to be able to be in court to do that correctly. But domestic violence prosecution was a huge need in our community. And since this was our first full year doing that, I wanted to give you a few stats and a little bit more information about how successful that partnership that we've developed has been. So the city's prosecution division partners with the YWCA and the Family Peace Initiative. This partnership has provided increased opportunities to the victims of domestic violence in our community to connect with the YWCA services. We try to have a holistic approach at prosecution. It doesn't do us much good to simply prosecute crimes if we don't help people get out of situations that they're in, if we don't help batterers get intervention program and training and education and counseling services so that they can stop the cycle that they are stuck in. So we do refer people to the Family Peace Initiative to help address offenders. Their batterers intervention program is nationally known, so we are a diversion-heavy program, but that is specifically because the research shows that if you can get someone into a program to stop the cycle, that is far better in the long run for your victims in your community. So we really partner a lot with that. We partner with the Mayor's Task Force Against Domestic Violence. When we asked you to invest in this a year ago, we leveraged your dollars with the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice awarded a 3-year grant of about $500,000. So roughly $1 for every dollar that you've invested in salaries in the prosecution division has been leveraged for the next 3 years into a grant program that helps pay for the batterers program, that helps pay for increased services for domestic violence victims. So that is real money that is being invested into your community to help try to stop this cycle. The next slide kind of goes through and just shows you a list of the cases that are currently pending. We have roughly 351 cases currently pending. It has been, as Judge Thadani said, a pretty major change, right? You have to have probation officers and you have to pay attention to warrants and bonds. And it has truly changed our court from a court that used to think about as just something that was traffic tickets and low-level misdemeanors to it's a court dealing with serious offenses. And we take that very seriously, but it has been successful. So the next slide is just a quote from the Family Peace Initiative that you can read at your own time, but talking about how your investment in this program has truly helped stop that black hole that Topeka had at the time when it was brought to us as something that needed addressed. So I'm really proud of the staff, Bridget Markley and Kelly Trussell in our office, Deisha Bronebridge, who have really invested their time in making this successful. This is not easy work, and it's not easy to agree to take on this kind of initiative, but I think it's important. And so I'm proud that as the city attorney's office, we have been able to embrace that and look for more changes. I've got more ideas on how maybe we revolutionize the system, but that's probably next year's budget. So speaking of next year's budget, if you did have to do a 13% cut, that unfortunately is not going to be very easily absorbed by my budget. If you looked on the first slide, and you don't have to turn to it, this slide's fine, Josh, but you can see that I don't have a lot of room in my budget that is not personnel related. We keep a pretty lean budget. Overall, there is a 4% increase to my budget this year that is predominantly due to contractual increases as well as necessary software that is at the end of life. As technology continues to increase, it makes it even more essential that we have systems in place that can help track deadlines and make sure that things don't get missed. There's a million emails a day, making sure that everything is tracked appropriately. That requires a legal management software. It also requires updated legal research tools. So our current software is at the end of life, which is causing some real operational challenges. However, new software is expensive, so in order to try to limit that cost, we have made various cuts this year to be able to absorb the implementation costs into the budget so that next year you would see the increase in subscription costs. We've also negotiated contracts, decreased costs, made sure that salaries were in the appropriate fund balances to help minimize costs. So what would have been a 7% cost, we've managed to limit to a 4% cost for next year. That being said, if we had to cut 13% out of my budget, the only way I can get there with the amount of money that I can control, I mean, I can control about 8% of my total budget, which is not 13%. So that is to eliminate people. Unfortunately, it would look at one prosecutor and one general government attorney. Because of various shortages, I know what that looks like. There's no way to prosecute, as I said, domestic violence with 3 full-time attorneys. So we would have to look at what do you give up in prosecution. On the general government side, unfortunately, due to various retirements and vacancies, I also know what it's like to be down a full-time government attorney for significant periods of time. it means longer wait times. It means longer wait times for you. It means longer wait times for departments. We like to turn around a contract in 24 hours. That's not possible with only 3 general government attorneys. So there will have to be some transitions and differences of expectations. Also, I am hoping over the next year to be able to leverage some technology to increase contract review time, to make that faster so that we can transition that extra time in our day to more trainings, which were necessary so that we can decrease claims against the city because we have more educational and training opportunities in-house for employees. Those take time. So if we can use our technology increases to be more efficient, then I think we can continue to get more done with our current level of staffing, but not by cutting a full-time governmental attorney. We will figure out how to make that work, but it is going to have a service impact for our constituents. And with that, I am happy to stand for any questions.
Councilman Kale.
If we get it on the schedule, I would love to have a presentation to kind of break down the stats page a little bit more and kind of go over those and kind of what each one means a little bit more. And then, like you said, you had some innovative ideas, I think you said.
I do.
Trying to discuss those a little also. So maybe in a month or two, get a presentation, and you and the city manager can work out a date that's probably good. And like I said, I'd just like to see more about what these numbers mean, so this way it's understandable to us and the rest of the city. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. This is another one of the pages that just stumped me. In our budget book, it reflects general fund and the special liability fund. It does not reflect your DOJ grant or other places where you have staff. Maybe are there other places where you have staff that are funded by a fund?
None of the DOJ money directly funds any staff salary. That is all general fund. That money is being leveraged through better intervention programs, community grants. So special liabilities, it is listed at the back that that's the 2 attorneys and 1.5 FTEs, as is on the slide. But I do not have any grant funded positions at this time.
So a couple questions in this simple page, that's page 43 in the book, shows that the total budget for the department went from 1.7 million in 2022 to 3.3 in 2025.
Have page, Josh, is that because it's including?
I'd have to dig into further because that's just a high-level overview, but we've had to add some positions over the last couple of years, and we've just because they were actuals, we might have been carrying some vacancies to where we're not paying out the full amount. So, and as we've reached more full employment, that's why some of the budget. But I can dig into the details on that by line item further and provide it to you.
And also, contractual went from 276,000 to $1 million.
That's predominantly from increases in facilities, fleet, or from the last 4 years, increases in our internal service charges.
In the shift, okay.
Yeah.
Also, I think what you're referencing includes both special liabilities and general fund for the total department budget, but I'll verify that.
Yes, this page has both.
Correct.
But it doesn't have, we're talking about the grant, and I was thinking that it was offsetting some of our costs.
Correct.
To get the domestic violence, but instead we're financing that. So that's part of this increase for sure.
Yeah, and one thing to add on that middle table, Amanda's right, that includes the special liability. So in the 24 and 25 budget, we budget in case we have to pay out a legal settlement or something of that nature. So if we don't have one, then the 22 actuals and 23 actuals are going to be much lower than what's in the budget.
So when it has contractual, is that where it gets paid out of?
That would be where the line item would fall on the hierarchy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none? Thank you, City Attorney.
Next, we're going to have our interim CFO, Ben Hart, come and give a presentation on the finance budget.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. Here for the Finance Department. The Finance Department is broken down into a few different disciplines. Accounting that tracks everything that goes out, everything that comes in to the city. We've got budget and performance, payroll, and then contracts and procurement. So those functions are led by 3 people. They're led by Teresa Steinledge, Leah Bowling, and Josh within the finance department. The finance department's got, as you know, 2 fairly big vacancies. One is the CFO position and the other one is the deputy position. Those are still funded within the budget, and I know one of them's been posted for filling. And it's probably been going on a little bit too long. The accomplishments for the year for the budget is really centered around audit opinions and making sure that the budget and the annual comprehensive financial report actually gets reviewed by national standards and then get awarded that review. We get comments back every year on what can be improved. I know there was some emails that came out here recently asking what this document is, if it's accurate or not. And I can tell you, there's this national organization combs through that information. They tie both of them together, both the annual comprehensive financial report and the budget. They tie them together to make sure everything works. And you guys have had that award countless numbers of years. And that's an important award you get. For FY25, one of the biggest goals we're going to have is the implementation of the new ERP system, the finance system. I know Randy talked about in her overview, IT talked about the implementation and replacement of the current general ledger into something much, much bigger. And I say it's much bigger because it's got an ability to automate, or if not, bring efficiency to pretty much anywhere we have in government that relies on a system. Rihanna mentioned one of them within planning, permits. It's more than just a finance system. HR is going to use it. It's across the board. But we've got to take everything we do today and put it in that system and make sure it's all together. It starts with finance. Natural place to start. We start with finance to make sure we get everything transferred over. So your accounting staff and budget staff are going to be doing their own job, and then on top of it, a whole nother job. And that's going to be making sure that this information gets into that system. In the long run, it's going to pay some pretty big dividends. The overall budget is $3.5 million. 80% of that is personnel. The contractual piece of that is, like Josh said earlier, the external auditors. We've got an actuary study that has to be done every year in there, and we also rely on the financial advisors on a regular basis for economic development, for any kind of TIF, RID, anything we've got questions over or we've got his assistance on. The Columbia Capital comes and helps the city work through a lot of that information, and you guys have seen them too. As far as the statistics are concerned, just to give you some highlighted information, we pay 31,000 invoices a year. That's all expenses headed out the door. We touch about 5,000 deposits coming in. All of that needs to be reconciled with any of the bank accounts we've got. When we talk about bids awarded through procurement, we've got 178 that go through, and it's been going up every year. We expect 190 is what we'll have here coming up. And then 100% return time on any kind of reports back to the state, either federal, state, or Capers deposits on time. And that actually benefits the employees themselves. Finally, is the maintaining the bond rating, S&P bond rating. And it's become more and more difficult as time goes on just because of the time we live in. And it's costs going up, going through COVID, costs going up, wages going up, and then the trying to find people. It has been a problem as well. But maintaining that through good policy is going to be a big chore.
I want to chime in on one thing real quick. So we've been getting some questions about the property tax rebate program that we began in 2024. We were asked to look into 2 additions for qualifications. So just as a background, $300,000 is budgeted for that program, and there's income qualifications and or age qualifications based off similar to the Kansas Homestead Act. We've been asked to add some qualifications to broaden the pool of people who could qualify by Councilman Duncan. And from finance perspective, we were okay. We were good with them, and those qualifications would be adding 100% disabled veteran qualification category. So people who are disabled veterans would now qualify for the rebate, and then increase the amount exempt from Social Security income counted as income from 50% to 75%. We were good with that, and I'm happy to turn it over to Councilman Duncan if he has anything else to add, but from a financial perspective, we thought those were minimal changes into the program to be added.
Councilman?
Thank you. I would just add, it's just a way to extend the program to those. And if you look at the numbers, we kind of already know, right now we exempt 50% of Social Security, just so you know. This just increases it to 75%. So we already have an idea of people who requested the program and just fell short of that. So we kind of already have that idea of a number. And then the 100% disabled vet is an obvious one, but again, it's not a lot of people. The important thing to note here is this does not change the line item. There's no more money that needs to be added. We budgeted $300,000 last year. We've spent about half of that. So this can be done within the same constraints without having to add any money to the budget. Which is what led us to the conversation saying, if we can expand it to a couple more categories or help some folks, great. So that just gives you background to where that came from. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Josh?
The last one. So when it comes to the 13% reductions, it's a broken record at this point. We're going to have to rely on people. And like I say, 80% of the finance department is personnel. So that's equivalent of 5 people. What we did go back and take a look at what was cut, not out of this document, but what Josh brought up to you before. Budget had a graduate fellowship position that was around $73,000, a little bit more than that when you count all-in costs that was deleted out of the budget. It's not in this document.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in this document. And then there's training and travel that's been eliminated, gone down to 0. That's where we started with this exercise. We believe there's about 80,000 more that we can probably pull out of the non-personnel line items. But as far as impacts are concerned with those individuals that have to be spread across all of the different divisions within finance, because we deal with so many RFPs going out, we deal with so many checks, both payroll checks and invoices. It'd slow that process down, obviously. Instead of paying invoices out once a week, it may be once a month. The reconciliations would slow down. We'd have to take the ACFR, the annual comprehensive financial report that we put together, it has to get outsourced. And our auditors would do it. It would be a greater cost, but wouldn't cost as much as a potty. That's just kind of some of the internal impacts. And I'd be remiss by not saying that you've run the department right now pretty light without those 2 key positions. I know the finance staff has had to pick up everything. When I got here, they were still running everything. And they've done a phenomenal job working. And Josh would typically have somebody sitting right next to him, and he doesn't. And the other folks that work in finance do the same thing. They picked that job up. When I got here, it was the auditors. Auditors just arrived at the same time. And of course, I was able to help them through that, but the yeoman's work was on the accountants and Josh and everybody to make sure that they had the information they needed. On almost a $500 million budget, that's a big report. And to be as accurate as it has to be, the accountants have to know what they're doing. And I can tell you, I'd put these guys up against anybody we represent. But that's all I've got. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions from the body? Councilman Miller and then Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you, Mayor. You said paying out invoices once a month or once a week would possibly change to once a month. What would be the ramifications of doing something like that?
Yeah, a couple of things. I used to do this in my former life once a month. It means that we'd have to be flexible enough to where if we had a critical payment that has to go out, we would have to make that, they call it a manual warrant. We'd actually make that a manual check, run it through a separate system. So we'd have one big system and then the rest would just be catch-up invoices. People would get, companies would get paid slower, and that's not something we want to do. If anything, with the new system, we may be able to sign people up for ACH transfers, which we've got clients that do that, where the renters go in and actually register themselves with their bank account, and you hit a button. It's not that easy. Hit a button and it goes to the bank account. It's not a check. So there's a lot that can be done between here and there. It's a good question, though.
Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of a small-sized question and a big question. Small-sized one, regarding the tax rebate program, I recall when we moved the franchise fee program out, how staff-intensive is that?
So it's when we had our graduate fellow and another vacant position for the first quarter of the year, I mean, they had over 500 calls, and it was pretty much in and out all day, so it's hard to get in a rhythm of actually doing work when we have one or two staff members doing the work. So it was pretty staff intensive. Now it's cooled off because obviously most people have applied, but for the first 3 or 4 months of the year, it's very busy.
Well, I wondered, and I saw in the budget book that there was a proposal, that you said no more money, but to spend $50,000 to hire somebody else to do that.
Yeah, so just to touch base on that, just with the underrun this year, as Councilman Duncan alluded to, we're going to project to spend about $120,000 out of the $300,000. We figure part of the cuts that we put in the supplement were for that, and we'd like to spend that money from the underrun in 2024 to help pay for the 2025 service early.
So just to clarify, so it would still be within that $300,000? No additional money beyond the $300,000 that's already funded?
It doesn't look like that in the budget.
Well, because that was published before these conversations.
Just so you know, when they came to me and asked me about having those conversations with the outside group, which just would be Mary Thomas, and I specifically said, if we can do it within the same budget, I'm good. If we can't, I'm not. And so I did have that conversation before they entered those discussions.
Thank you. Just, again, for us getting out of what our core services are, that was, I know, an experimental thing this year, but I just think as we look at these things, we've got to figure out what's core. Because my second question, which is a bigger one, you mentioned our bond rating. We walk into 2025 with a $15 million shortfall. What's that going to do to our bond rating?
That's a good question. We've had that conversation with Columbia Capital. And bond ratings are more than just the math on the paper. And you guys have been through it 100 times, I'm sure. If there's not a plan on the backside of it, then it becomes an issue. But you've always had a plan on the backside of it. And that's going to be a story, if not a plan that's going to be told by City Manager Perez when he's on that call and when we go through that process. Luckily, we just went through it with the general obligation and the revenue bonds. So that's over. We're really talking about now when we get into 2025 and having that conversation. It'll be important for Columbia Capital to be on the same page with the city manager and the budget manager to be able to tell that story. I think it can be overcome and mitigated is what they call it. It can be mitigated because we've seen it before 100 times. We've seen it before even in this state. I lived it in the unified government for about 7 years. And it's about a plan into the future and then sticking to that plan. One of the biggest things you've got going for you, if you've got a policy for fund balance levels and you maintain that and manage that to a degree, you guys know what that is as a governing body. That's a very positive aspect within a rating agency's mind. There's a lot of governing bodies that have no clue what that policy is. You guys are on top of that because you get staff that follow that. Right. And that's a big deal. You've got policies that are set in place that help you through this process.
Thank you for that. My concerns haven't changed since day one on this proposal, that I don't think the proposals are viable. And therefore, if I was them, I wouldn't be convinced. But thank you for the response. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Gill.
So you mentioned on there the maybe going from weekly to monthly reconciliations and payments, things like that. My day job, I do purchasing and reconciliations.
Yeah.
would that, for me, in my job, in my day job, if I did it once a month, it would just be ultimately time consuming for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, it would be.
Would it increase the personnel hours by swapping out that, you know?
Well, for one, I hope we never get to that point. I think we could probably do other things before we hit to that once a month. Because I think you're right. At some level, it's not going to make itself. It's not going to make the money you're needing it to. What we're talking about is how much can whoever's left in that accounting department process these invoices. Hopefully that never changes. But you're right. We'd have to look and see just how much that's going to cost.
Thank you.
Councilman Duncan?
So, assuming they don't change their mind, it looks like the Fed may reduce rates to some degree next month, September. Are there any opportunities we will have or we are looking at to refinance anything to get some long-term savings when those rates are cut?
That's a good question. And I haven't looked at that. I don't know if Columbia Capital probably has, because we just went through the general obligation process. I know the process they use on the general obligation and the revenue bonds, when they start that process, they'll take a look at what you have outstanding and compare it to what they think the market's going to be.
I know they can't promise any savings, but if we could at least follow up with them to see if they're doing that for us, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The other thing is you've got moving forward for you is really the investment piece. And you use them as a broker for investments. So they make sure that they maintain the maturities at a peak, at a level that you're going to get that gain off of it. So those
to
are going to
that,
maintain
I'm
high.
going to ask what's going to sound like, and maybe it is a simplistic question in some regards. All right. So we have the reserve funds. We have two, but let's talk about the one we're going to spend down, which is the one we just created first. Yeah. And it's sitting there. I'm assuming it's collecting some kind of interest.
Yeah, I would assume.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as we look to spend that down next year, do we do that in a manner that holds on to those dollars as long as humanly possible so that they can continue to gain interest throughout the year before we start writing checks from that account?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so the answer would be yes. Yeah. So for example, I'll use a simple example. When we have 3 pay periods months, we have to have more cash on hand because if we have CDs expiring, we want to have to be able to account for paying those 3 pay periods. So that is taken into effect. We just don't take it into account. We just don't arbitrarily do it. So we try to, and same thing with if we have construction projects, a lot of our construction invoices come in at the end of a construction season or in December. So we try to tend to have more cash on hand for those times of year and invest more in the summer when we're not getting those invoices. So that is taken into account. It's not great. It's hard to be down to the dollar, but
right. And it's not like it's millions and millions of dollars, but it all adds up.
It adds up, yeah. So we do 100% try to do that.
There was a time this summer where you could park money in cash accounts and make more interest on that than you could a CD. Right. So we just left it there.
Yeah.
And that's part of the wise part of having somebody that watches it for a living. Yeah, doing that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Further questions, Ben? Is that all, Ben? Oh, Councilman Kell?
I just want to say thank you to Josh. You do an amazing job with this. You know, you kind of had to fly a little sometimes some leadership on, during the transition time period, but you do an amazing job with this and explain everything very well. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thanks to both of you, Josh and Ben, and the staff. It's been kind of flying high. And City Manager for coming in right at this moment. I was going to follow up on a couple of the comments that were just made. I mean, because the bond rates are just now going up, most of our stuff that is paying out is at lower rates than we would get it today. So I wouldn't count on a whole. No. We do have policies that talk about a formula of how much you have to be saving to make it worthwhile to refinance. And so it seems like it's a little premature for us to have much to refinance at this point. Just so don't count on it, I'd say.
Well, we will
also, I've been here through when the city went to, I think it was usually for a long time, a 3-week delay at least to getting payments out, and we've been at a 1-week turnaround now for, probably about the time I came on, actually. So maybe 15 years, but people really appreciate that, that prompt payment from the city and so on. So
And
we'd be
if I could
ashamed
add,
to put it at risk.
if I could add to what you're saying is even the technology nowadays, or getting rid of any kind of check, if it's not a direct deposit for payroll, or if it's a pay card for the teenagers watching that are lifeguards, they never get a check because they always lose the check. I've got two daughters, always lost a check, but they're college kids now. They still lose checks. But now even vendors, right? It's more self-serve. So that system, once you plug it in, it's gonna be a long-term investment, right?
Okay. Well, thank you both. I appreciate it. City Manager?
So next we're gonna have Monique come up and do a presentation on community engagement.
Greetings, Mayor, Governing Body, City Manager. Bianca Burnett, Leroy Younger, Amanda Cisneros, and Zaina Afada are committed to supporting and uplifting our community every single day. By actively engaging with our neighbors, advisory councils, committees, businesses, and organizations, community engagement aims to ensure that the voices of all of our community members are heard and considered in decision-making processes. We help build trust between our local government and those we serve by promoting transparency and facilitating better communication. Community engagement provides valuable resources, information, and programs tailored to meet the unique needs of the community. We're always seeking ways to identify local issues and collaborate with neighbors, neighborhood leaders, and community partners to develop solutions, ensuring that the community remains vibrant, inclusive, and responsive to our neighbors' needs. Lastly, beyond our outreach efforts, we are here to listen and to address the community concerns with professionalism and care. We approach every inquiry and complaint with diligence, ensuring each concern receives a thorough and effective response. Our goal is to cultivate a community where every voice is heard, respected, and valued. In the presentation you were provided with our 24 accomplishments, I would like to provide you some additional information that I'd like to share. Due to the significant amount of blight in our community, we're pleased to announce a second round of Fight the Blight for our LMI neighborhoods before the end of this year. We estimate that this effort will result in the removal of at least another 20 tons of waste. In February, we successfully launched the Community Engagement e-Blast, which provides valuable updates and resources directly to our community members and partners via email. This initiative is designed to keep everyone informed and connected, further strengthening our collective engagement and impact. It's imperative that we consider that not all of our neighbors have access to digital information. To ensure inclusivity, our community engagement team distributes resource bags containing the same essential information. We've successfully delivered over 4,500 resource bags throughout the community this year alone. Partnerships are vital with community engagement. We partnered with Contracts and Procurement to host the 2024 Supplier Diversity Expo earlier in July. The event was extremely successful, with 75 small business owners in attendance, participating in a vendor fair, breakout sessions, and a keynote address. We're looking forward to phase 2, the upcoming Supplier Diversity Workshop scheduled for this November. We're expecting over 100 participants. Also, we were honored to partner with the Topeka Center for Peace this year and Justice and Becoming the Better You, offering the BTBU Youth Summit, which was held in February. Our sponsorship afforded 250 participants from local elementary, middle school, and high schools to participate in the summit. We also have a couple of other events taking place before the end of this year. One is we will be coming to an end of our TSC Get Digital Coalition program that is providing the 1,200 refurbished desktops that we received from Jayhawk Area and Agency. And we have 200 left of the 1,200, and we will be having a large event on October the 1st that we will be able to distribute those to those who qualify that are 18 and over. And we're extremely excited about the opportunity to sponsor with the Kansas Department of Children and Families to provide a resource and job fair that will take place this October. This event will provide invaluable opportunities and resources to support the well-being and success of our community. Our FY25 goals are enhancing community awareness of government initiatives, policies, and services by increasing outreach and communication efforts, fostering more interdepartmental collaborations, monitoring and measuring community impact, establishing and strengthening community partnerships, enhancing youth engagement. We recognize the vital importance of nurturing our community's future leaders. We're dedicated to collaborating with local youth programming partners to build a legacy of growth, resilience, and success for generations to come. And our last goal is to identify fundraising, training for neighborhood leaders and community partners. Finally, if a reduction of 13% was applied to the community engagement budget, the service impact would consist of reduced neighborhood programming, reduced community partnerships, decreased community outreach, and decreased marketing campaigns and online initiatives. These deductions will result in a further disconnect with the community. This concludes my presentation. I'll stand for any questions.
Oh, Monique, you must have done a very good job because I don't see anybody raising their
Or
hand.
everyone's tired.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So the last department we're covering is the city manager's office. So just briefly what the city's manager's office is, that consists of city manager, clerk, and communications. And we've been kind of talking about it with the recent ordinance change recently, so we have a fairly good idea. There's no material changes in the communications or clerk budget besides general internal service charges or personnel changes. And then just some of the goals are just getting that office fully staffed, and then kind of establish some strategic planning for future budget needs, and figure out a plan for the future budget, and then while maintaining high level service delivery. And then finally, kind of like Ben said with the broken record, 13% reduction in these areas would just be mainly not hiring FTEs that we've added recently, which would maybe delay some strategic planning or any initiatives we have, like to increase cohesion among departments. So that's just kind of a high level overview of, and this is our last department slide before we open up discussion, but that's just kind of a high level overview of the executive division.
Councilman Kell?
How many are in the city's clerk office right now?
3.
So that'd be a 50% cut in personnel. Or, yeah, 30, sorry, excuse me, yeah. And then what was the full-time employee that would be proposed cut, or, I'm not sure, I mean, he's in your office, would that?
So within the city manager's office, it would be one of the executives that we have, whether that be deputy city manager, chief financial officer, or potentially even the DEI officer. And so they would be one of those types of positions.
All right, thank you.
Further questions? Okay. I'm glad I didn't see your name up there, Robert. Okay. Councilwoman Ortiz?
So where are we at on the DEI position? Can you tell me?
So I will tell you that I want to seek guidance from this body as to what the vision of that position would be. I will tell you that I have, I think this week, if not last week, I asked Monique to develop a proposal for me as to how we could potentially consolidate that position with the community engagement team. And so it's twofold. I want to hear from the governing body what the vision is for that type of position, and then also to try to marry that with our staff vision for that as well.
But the DEI position was over the community engagement, correct?
So DEI was over human resources and community engagement. That's
okay.
correct. And so one of the last items in a previous city council meeting was to actually, pull apart human resources from that group. And so in working with Monique, I want to determine if there's an opportunity to maybe consolidate the duties of the DEI officer with the community engagement manager, and find some kind of efficiency there. But again, want to hear the vision from this governing body on those efforts that we should be undertaking.
Okay, so right now, what you're telling me is HR director's over here, the DEI is over here. They're separated now.
That's correct, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so he's just kind of out there.
The position is just out there, yes.
Okay.
And Monique is the interim DEI officer as well.
Right, right. And then she would be the manager, she's the manager that you're looking for duties to go, maybe potentially go to under her?
So she is the manager of community engagement
Right.
as well. And so I'm looking to see if there's an opportunity to consolidate those positions. But again, I want to give Monique an opportunity to share with me her vision as well.
Understood. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further? Josh?
No, that's kind of all we had for presentations. I want to thank the governing body for meeting on the fourth Tuesday. I know we'd like to take breaks sometimes, but we wanted to have a special meeting just to make sure we can answer questions and provide the governing body with full information about this year's budget.
Well, I appreciate the attempt, and I'm and trying to make it consolidated so we could get all the information and making it possible on a special meeting to not get distracted by all the other business of the city and really focus on the budget. City Manager?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to reiterate that the next meeting, next Tuesday evening's meeting, is dedicated to answering any questions and then to also deliberating on any potential amendments that you would like to propose and discuss amongst the governing body to potentially be included as part of the adopted budget that you would be considering scheduled currently for September 10th. And so the team and I are available to you for any questions, for any guidance that you may need, and any questions or any guidance that you may need in going through that process. And the intent for next Tuesday's meeting, if we do have amendments to consider, or if you want to make them on the floor, what we will be asking for is probably through straw votes, an indication from the governing body on those things that you want us to consider and include as part of the adopted budget.
Questions for the City Manager? Councilwoman Hiller?
Josh, you sent us an email about the proposed format for amendments. When I opened up the attachment, it was just a blank Excel spreadsheet. Was that intended, or did mine just not open up right?
I would have to go back and look at the email. I think I sent it to the city manager and everything looked right for him. So I can resend that out to you if there was issues.
Right? It just was a blank
Okay, yeah,
form.
it must, yeah.
So I believe that there was a PDF that, if I recall correctly, there was a PDF that was included with that showed an example. Because essentially what we're going to be looking for in the amendments is if you want to propose to reduce something to fund something else, that's going to be a proposed amendment. Or if you just want to reduce something to go towards a mill reduction or something of that nature.
Okay.
So essentially what we're asking you to do is to identify the area that you want to have reduced and either move it to enhanced service or reduce something and maybe you do a mill reduction or something. So it's basically where you're taking it from and what you're putting it into. And those will be the items that we hope to discuss with the council.
Just double checking, and I've been in a hurry. I know I was out of town, so if I didn't open everything, I just opened the form.
Resend it, yeah.
We can resend it. I can make sure, and we can meet if you need further clarification.
It's
and whatnot.
fine, and if the PDF just tells you how you want us to fill it
Yeah,
out,
yep.
then that's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Other questions for Josh? Thank you again, Josh. If there's no further discussion, I don't want to move on too fast. Make sure that governing body members have time to ask any questions they might have. All right, we'll move on to the next item. And that is that we have the need for an executive session this evening. If City Attorney will read, please.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 15 minutes to discuss employer-employee negotiations relating to one or more unions as justified by KSA 754319B3. The meeting will resume in this room of the Cyrus K. Holiday Building. The following staff will be necessary to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Manager Perez and any other staff he deems necessary.
Okay, for the need for an executive session, is there a motion to recess into executive session? Motion from Councilman Kell. Second from myself. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, we are recessed and go immediately into discussions on this executive session. So go if you got to go. Okay. We've had discussions during our first executive session. No action has been taken, and it's been determined that we need to extend into a second executive session. City Attorney, if you will read, please.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 30 minutes to discuss employer-employee negotiations relating to one or more unions as justified by KSA 754319B3. The meeting will resume in this room of the Cyrus K. Holiday Building. The following staff are necessary to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Manager Perez and other staff he deems necessary.
Okay, we've heard the need for extended second executive session. Motion to approve by Councilman Kell. I'll second the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, we will recess into our second executive session immediately.
I was actually trying to say I wanted to speak, but like when we get going.
We are coming out of our second executive session. No action has been taken by the governing body. There being no further business come before this body, the meeting is adjourned.
Soccer practice starts at 5:45.
In the morning?
AM.